Am I overreacting for seriously reconsidering my relationship after what my boyfriend did during my medical emergency? A couple weeks ago, I had a sudden medical emergency. I won't go into graphic detail, but it was serious enough that I ended up in the ER and had to stay overnight. I was scared out of my mind. I called my boyfriend. We've been together for about 2.5 years and lived together, but he didn't answer. I texted him explaining what was happening and told him which hospital I was at. No response. He finally showed up 9 hours later, around 2 a.m. When I asked him why it took so long, his explanation honestly stunned me. He said he had been at a bar with his friends and didn't want to ruin the vibe. That was his exact wording. He told me that I sounded fine over text, so he figured it could wait. Meanwhile, I was alone in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, terrified, and completely exhausted. I don't even remember what I said when he walked in because I was half asleep and emotionally drained. Since that night, I haven't been able to look at him the same way. He's been brushing it off as bad timing and keeps saying I'm blowing it out of proportion. He says I'm being cold and making him feel like a bad person over one mistake. But I can't stop thinking about what this says about him. If this is how he handles an emergency, how am I supposed to trust him long term? What happens if something worse happens in the future? Now, mutual friends are telling me to cut him some slack because we're both 21, he's young, and guys panic in situations like that. But to me, this doesn't feel like panic. It feels like a choice. He chose not to show up. Am I overreacting by thinking this isn't something I can't just forgive and forget? Wow. Well, there's a lot to unpack with this story, and there's an update. But before we jump into the update, I just have a few quick thoughts. And I'm not making excuses for anybody, but we are both really young, and there's clearly a very strong immaturity coming from his side. It's interesting, too, that people around you were sort of defending him and saying that, guys panic in situations like this, which, I'm 33 years old. I'm not sure what I would have done if I were in that situation and I were 21. I can pretty confidently say I wouldn't stay out with my friends and continue drinking until almost 2 o'clock in the morning. But I could definitely also confidently say that I, probably would still panic a little bit. But I think this is why communication is so important in relationships, because you need to know whether or not you can rely on the person that you're with to be able to help you handle situations like this. And you need to know whether or not they can be listed as an emergency contact. So let's read the update before my head explodes, because I really need to see how this ended off before I share any other thoughts. Update. So a few days ago, I sat him down and told him I needed to understand why he made that choice. I asked him to imagine if the situation were reversed, if he were alone in the ER overnight and I chose to stay at a bar because I didn't want to ruin the vibe. He got defensive almost immediately. He said I was rewriting the story, and he did come eventually, and that nothing actually bad happened, so I should be grateful it turned out okay. When I told him the outcome didn't erase how abandoned I felt in that moment, he rolled his eyes and said, "You're still stuck on that?" That's when something in me just snapped. I realized he wasn't sorry for what he did. He was annoyed that I was still hurt by it. I told him I wasn't asking him to grovel. I just needed to know that if something serious happened again, I wouldn't be alone. He didn't reassure me. Instead, he said I was being dramatic and letting Reddit strangers poison my view of him. This conversation ended with him saying, I can't keep apologizing for one bad night. So I told him I wasn't asking for another apology. I was asking for accountability, and I wasn't getting it. Right now, I'm staying with a friend. We haven't officially broken up, but I told him I need space to figure out whether I can be in a relationship where showing up during an emergency is apparently optional. I still care about him, but I care about feeling safe more. And for those asking, no, the medical issue wasn't minor. I'm okay now, but being told afterward that it wasn't that serious when the doctors clearly thought otherwise just made everything worse. I guess I'm realizing this wasn't about one night in the ER. It was about learning who he is when things get hard. That's the end of the update. And that last sentence is so powerful. I'm realizing this wasn't about one night in the ER. It was about learning who he is when things get hard. And you're absolutely right. It's crazy, too, that there were people actually defending him, because it would be one thing if he felt really bad about how he reacted, and, you know, if maybe there was actually like a panic moment for him where he just like wouldn't step up because he was genuinely afraid and scared. And that's not me defending it, but I think if he cared more about the impact that he had that night, then I feel like that would give you something to try to forgive him. But the fact that he doubled down with his immaturity says so much about him. And it's so important to be able to count on your partner to step up in situations like that. You need someone to be able to vouch for you in situations like this, or be able to step up and make tough decisions. You know, I think 2 or 2.5 years is still kind of early in a relationship, but this whole situation is kind of making me think about how we just recently had our second child, and both times she had a C-section. And she told me, you know, if things go badly in one direction or another, like she made it very clear with me what to prioritize to be able to be her voice if things went wrong for any particular reason. It's so, so important to be able to have your partner be able to be your voice and to be able to rely on them when horrible things happen to you, and vice versa. You know what I mean? And if this guy can't even just show up at the hospital to make sure that you're okay, and doesn't care at all that that had a negative impact on your feelings about him and your trust in him, your ability to rely on him, then he is so much more immature than the first part of the story made out. It sounds like he really needs to look inward and maybe try to put himself in your shoes to understand, like, reverse the roles. If he was in the hospital and things were looking really bad and scary, and he contacted you, and you know, were out with your friends or whatever, and decided you didn't want to show up for 9 hours and act like it wasn't a big deal, like, how would he feel? Because if he's the type of person that roles reverse would like try to hold you accountable in the same way, then clearly we've got some serious issues here. Regardless of whether or not that conversation was had or we tried to level with him in that way, I would seriously be questioning whether or not I wanted to continue a relationship with someone like that, especially when he doubled down and really just acted like you were being dramatic about the whole thing. What a crazy, crazy situation. My take is that it's probably time to move on if he can't man up and, you know, be the partner that you deserve him to be for you. But now, for the listeners, I would love to know your thoughts. So let me know in the comments, and thank you for tuning in.